Good evening and welcome to Story Hour. I'm tonight's host, Laura Blackwell. My co-host, Marvelous Daniel Marcus, started Story Hour over 2 years ago so that he and his writer buddies could hang out and read each other's stories. And since then, we've been meeting every Wednesday, pretty much, and bringing in lots more writer buddies to read lots more stories. And it's been so much fun for us. And tonight we have two returning favorites. We have Kate Heartfield and Elad Haber. And I'd also like to welcome those of you who are joining us watching, whether you are watching us live on Facebook, live on Zoom, or sometime in the future that I can't imagine, probably also on Facebook. If you can, please consider donating to one or both of tonight's featured nonprofits, Fish of Sandcap and HarperCollins Union Solidarity Fund. Elad Haber is reading for Fish of Sandcap. FISH stands for Food Programs, Island-Based Education, Social Services, and Helping Hands and Financial Assistance. Sandcap stands for Sanibel and Captiva Islands. FISH is a human services organization focused on neighbors helping neighbors with the vision to create communities where all people have the support they need to thrive. The mission is to enrich the lives of all people in Sanibel and Captiva Islands by neighbors helping neighbors with social services, education, and assistance. And just to point out why these particular communities might be looking at this a little more, these communities were hit really hard by Hurricane Ian. And so this is an area that really could use some attention and some help right now. You can learn more at fishofsandcap.org. Kate Heartfield is reading for the HarperCollins Union Solidarity Fund. Yeah. The HarperCollins Union Local 2110 UAW, the only unionized Big Five book publisher, has been on strike since November 10th of this year. The union represents over 250 employees across HarperCollins editorial, sales, publicity, design, legal, and marketing departments, and is bargaining for diversity commitments, union protections, and wage adjustments, all of which really should just be there for all of us in this century. Oh, sorry, editorializing. When you donate or buy a book from the HCU bookshop, you help these workers cover essential expenses like rent and groceries. And, come on, editorializing again, it's the holidays. These people have been on strike for over a month, and these are the people who make the books that we all love. Books that our friends have written, books that we just want to read, and they need to have a living wage for doing that. So you can learn more at their Linktree. It's Linktree is like linktr.ee/HPC Union. And the reason I want to give you that Linktree address and not just the Solidarity Fund is because they also have information and a really nice little bookshop so that, if you don't have a lot of charity giving dollars right now, but you do need to buy some books, that's a place you can go and you can help somebody out while you're getting the books that you need. So two very worthy causes tonight that are very close to the hearts of the people who are reading, and really rather stirred mine as well. If you join us on Zoom, please feel free to leave your camera on. It's awfully nice to see people. And we have the text chat here for chatting. If you're joining us on Facebook, chat to your heart's content. Just understand if we're not there talking back right away. Sorry. And our first reader tonight is, I believe, Kate Heartfield. Kate Heartfield writes historical fantasy novels, including the Sunday Times bestseller, The Embroidered Book, which I believe is getting a beautiful new cover, and the forthcoming mythological retelling, The Valkyrie. She also writes novels set in the Assassin's Creed universe. Kate's novels, novellas, short stories, and games have won or been shortlisted for several major awards, including 3 Nebula nominations in the novella and game writing categories. She's a former journalist who lives near Ottawa, Canada. Kate, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you both for keeping this this wonderful series going. It's been just a delight, and I'm happy to be back again. And I think this is the first time that Elad and I have had a chance to hang out. So this is wonderful. So I am going to read 2 very short stories tonight. The first one is the longer of the 2, and it is called Not Valid for Spain. And it's a story about striking workers, about labor organizing in the run-up to the Spanish Civil War. It's set in Toronto, but it's about workers organizing to go over and fight in the Spanish Civil War. And I thought, because I wanted to read that story, it would be a fitting connection to the cause of the HarperCollins Union Solidarity Fund. So the story was published in the anthology 49th Parallels, which is Alternative Canadian Histories and Futures, edited by Hayden Trenholm in 2018. So it's been out for a little while. So Not Valid for Spain. And yeah, the other face you will see on my Zoom is my cat Minerva. She is always present when I'm on Zoom, and she also likes to nudge my webcam, so it may jostle a little bit. It was a red sunset, just like tonight. Oh, sorry, I wanted to mention as well, there is, this is because this is running up to the Spanish Civil War, there's a little bit of mention of violence in the context of war near the end. So if that's something you'd rather skip, please do skip out on that. It was a red sunset, just like tonight, on October 13th, 1937. I got off the train in Toronto. The Union Hall was humming with striking garment workers, some flesh, some aluminum. One ran right into me as I walked through the door, and it hurt. As I rubbed my shoulder, I gaped at her motionless face, a gleaming carbide complexion with a bob of black horsehair, a dress with a sailor collar. On the collar, a cursive R was embroidered in careful black stitches. I hadn't seen many robots at all back home in Vancouver, and never would have dreamed of finding any in a hall full of striking workers. I'd thought robots couldn't strike. Any robot within a certain radius of its radio control tower would report to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, no matter what. They only got nights off to perform self-maintenance. More than a machine, the advertisements declared. A true worker who can do anything a human can do, except lollygag. But that evening, those robots of Toronto were milling, chatting, arguing. Too many people making too much angry noise. I glanced back toward the door where I'd come in, half expecting to see a bunch of cops come through. Then I scanned the room for windows big enough for me to wriggle out of if they did. I didn't want to answer any questions about who recruited me and for what purpose. You're looking for Walter, said the robot who'd run into me, and I jumped. It wasn't a question. Walter Chomiak was indeed the man I'd come to see, the top man of the underground Canadian recruitment effort. I was reluctant even to nod. How can you know whether you can trust a robot? But I didn't have to say anything. It wasn't really a question. Follow me, she said. Her voice was odd, not the same as the other robots whose bits of conversation filled the hall. Deep and thick, like someone speaking through tears. She must have modulated it somehow, found a way to make it unique. With her stiff legs, she walked like a marching soldier. I followed her, still saying nothing, through the crowd of flesh and metal. At the back of the hall, wooden stairs led to a kind of mezzanine and a grimy office door. Here, she said, I'm sure you'll do just fine. That sounded bitter, almost angry, but I told myself it must just be that weird synthetic voice of hers. She was probably trying to be reassuring. What reason could she have to be angry with me, a man she'd never met? What reason could a robot have to be angry at all? Before I could thank her, she was gone, off into the crowd. I opened the door and saw him. A big man rubbing his temple as he read a telegram. He put it down, walked over to take my hand, and closed the door. I gave him my name, said I'd just come in on the train from Vancouver. You sure about this, Stephen? He asked. I nodded, but he crossed his big arms and stared as if he expected something more. I was never very good at declarations and felt a little put out that he seemed to want one from me, travel sore as I was. I was an educated, healthy young man offering myself for slaughter. What more did he want from me? Who was he to tell me whether I could or couldn't fight? Good people paid my way here so you could send me to fight the fascists, I said, with an edge to my voice that would cut brisket. I've been unemployed for a year, Mr. Chomiak. There won't be any real change. Not for me, not for this country, until we show what ordinary folks can do together. Spain is where it starts. Chomiak managed to look both amused and sad. His mouth moved in a funny way. I think I can guess why now. He must have known already what I wouldn't learn for some time, that the war was indeed much bigger than Spain, but that it would outlast both of us. But he clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Good lad, the Mackenzie Papineau Battalion will be happy to have you." For the first time since Vancouver, or so it felt, I exhaled. My little speech wasn't much, but he probably figured if I were a police officer rooting out anti-fascists, I'd have come better prepared. The government put "not valid for Spain" in my passport, I said. Don't worry about that. It's in all the passports now. The route's through France these days, over the Pyrenees. Tomorrow you'll take the train for New York City, go to Webster Hall, find Archie Brown, and show him this. He held out a scrap of brown silk with a number embroidered in black thread on it, 922. Sew it inside your jacket, he said. This will tell Archie you're not a cop or a goon. This is your ticket to Spain. I elbowed my way back through the crowd and stood at the edge of Spadina Avenue, trying to remember which way the rooming house was. The lights danced on the pavement. First time in Toronto? Synthetic voice or not, hers was somehow recognizable. I knew it was her before I turned around. The robot with the sailor collar, the embroidered R. Her mouth was just wide enough to hold a cigarette. She left the cigarette in her mouth, didn't use her hands. I've been riding the rails, but not this far till now, I said. I'm only here for one night. She looked straight at me. She never glanced away. I am Ruth. They give you names? No. Do you want me to sew that on for you? I was still clutching the bit of brown silk. I muttered something about having a needle and thread, about how I thought she must be sick of sewing, if robots got sick of things. I want to go over too, she said, taking one step toward me. It would have been a whisper if a robot could whisper. To Spain? I was so shocked I nearly blurted it out, caught myself in time. She could have been a trap. Go over? I asked as innocently as I could, but my surprise must have shown in my face. Women are fighting in Spain, you know. Haven't you heard of the milicianas? Yes, but not Canadian women, I protested, not quite sure why this should matter, but sure that it did. There will be. Haven't you heard Jean Watts is over there now? She's officially there as a journalist, but she's planning to join the MacPaps if they'll take her. And why shouldn't they take her? Aren't we all comrades? Just because Jean Watts paid her way to Spain didn't mean this robot with the bob haircut was anyone's comrade. Yes, all right, but I mean, I am a tool of the capitalist class. I know. Robots are ready-made Fifth columnists, Walter says. He will not send me. I asked. I felt I should cheer her up, though I know that was ridiculous. What was she but a mangle of parts and circuits artfully arranged? At least you know you'll always have a job, I said brightly. I knew a fellow put out of work by robots in Vancouver. I do not call it a job if I didn't choose to be employed there. Besides, she said, holding up her arms for me to see, we are on strike. Then I finally noticed that her arms ended at the wrist in an aluminum fork. She'd knocked the pins out of the joint. That's why the human strikers accepted the robots among them that night. Comrades indeed. They would report for work the next morning, all right, but not do their employers a damn bit of good. Something about her severed wrists looked like a wound. You offered to sew my patch on, I stammered. I know where to get my hands, in a pinch. I will get them now if you take me with you. She'd get her hands if she chose. She'd use them only if she chose, to operate a machine, to sew a letter onto her collar, to carry a gun. But if you leave Toronto, if you go out of the range of the control tower, you just shut off, right? I mean, that's how it works in Vancouver. She was walking one step at a time, gently steering us into a darker and quieter corner at the side of the building. Robots can't whisper, but they can choose where they stand. There are robots in New York who have learned how to change the way their circuits function, she said. The government will not let anyone hear about it, but I know it is true. If you took me to New York, I could find them. I trust you, Stephen. I hadn't told her my name. You were listening outside the door, I accused her. I could feel my cheeks get hot. Part embarrassment that she had heard my little speech as I proved myself to Chomiak, part anger that she'd been so bold. These workers of Toronto trusted robots so much that they let one linger around Walter Chomiak's office door. The walls are thin. I stand where I want to stand in this place. Here, I'm a fellow worker. Out there, I'm nothing but a tool. That doesn't make sense, Stephen. It's a broken machine. If you let us robots fight by your side, we can fix it. We can make a world of fellow workers, a world where I can stand where I like. It sounded very much like the speech I'd given myself, but I looked down at her missing hands and couldn't help believing hers had to be as genuine as mine. Even if I took you with me, and even if someone got you working out of the range of the control tower, you'd have to get yourself to Spain, if that's really what you want. Of course it is what I want, she said, her voice even. I have told you it is what I want. In Spain, there are a few liberated robots fighting now among the Republicans. You could give me your patch so they would think, Archie approved me. They are not likely to turn down a strong human like you. Patch or no patch. Give it to me. Say you lost it. Humans lose things. There was something in her impassive face that reminded me of the women back in Vancouver who had made me sandwiches for the train journey. Hard-working women who had watched me go with some expression in their eyes I couldn't read. Those steady-eyed women had sent me to Toronto. I wouldn't let them down. I signed up to fight and die, not make this robot my business. She wasn't my business. What did I say to her at last? I can't remember the words, no matter how many times I replay the scene in my mind. Something like, I'm sorry, probably. I can't risk it, perhaps. And I asked if she wanted to go to a cafe with me on my last night in Toronto. I wanted to show her I trusted her that much. As clearly as I can see the red sun through that barred window, I can see the red end of her cigarette drop to the sidewalk before she walked away from me. She would have dazzled the world. She would have commanded her own aluminum brigade. First, I hoped, in some moldy corner of my heart, that she was wrong about the robots fighting for the Republicans. I hoped that would absolve me, but there they were from the very day I arrived in Spain, gleams of carbide amidst the gore. After a while, I pinned my hopes on seeing her among them. After all, I thought I'd recognize her face. I knew I'd recognize her voice. I talked to the robots, asked if they knew one named Ruth from Toronto. Surely they found someone else to help her get to Spain, I thought. But nobody ever had any word of her. Several months later, Franco unleashed his own aluminum column. They fought on, no matter what wounds we inflicted on them. We shot off their hands and they spat bullets. We blew off their heads and they kept walking. We knew then that the war was lost, but we kept fighting, though our own governments called us criminals. I can't count how many robots I blew to hell. But what I see, when I stare at the red westerly sun, is the first of all the casualties I inflicted and received, and the only one that hurts me now. The end. So that's the end of my first story for tonight. And I'm going to read a very short one to finish up my stint. So the next one is a sort of poetic and strange little flash story about winter road maintenance, which, you know, why not? It seemed appropriate for this time of year. So it's called The Wedding of Snow, Earth, and Salt, and it appeared in Podcastle, and it also appeared as a reprint in Augur magazine. The Wedding of Snow, Earth, and Salt. The north wind raised his glass, a tall flute clouded with cold, filled with thick yellow wine, so sweet it stung the tongue. All the guests raised their glasses and waited through the speech, which was a warning. What is done undoes. You will not leave here as you came. All the guests drank, and their eyes opened wide as the ice wine coated their throats. In walked Snow, alone in a long white dress. She brought a gift of crystal for her bridegrooms and a curse of chills. Snow made her vow. I am white and crisp today, and tomorrow I shall be gray and soft. The east wind was brash in her floppy hat, known to be wealthier than she looked, dressed in zephyrs. She took Snow's skinny chin in her hands and asked, "What do you three desire that a marriage can give you?" "We want to be strong," Snow muttered, "strong enough to survive." The east wind shook her head. No such thing in this world. "Strong enough to leave a mark, then," said Snow, pulling out of the east wind's grip. "Ah," said the east wind. "On each other? On the world?" "Yes," said Snow, as two defiant pink blotches bloomed on her pale cheeks. "We are stronger together. We are ready to sacrifice everything we are now, singly, for what we might be together." The east wind shrugged and dug her hands into her pockets. She sprinkled sand onto the bare feet of the bride and spoke the lines of poetry she had composed herself. "Let there be no parting, though the breezes play rough." In walked Earth, alone and naked, skin gleaming like brass. He brought a gift of gravity for his bride and groom and a curse of weight. When he came, Snow lifted her chin a little, stood straighter. He made his vow. I am warm and fertile today, and tomorrow I shall be cold and poisoned. The south wind wore his encircling finery of feathers, still bright though they were frayed at the edges. He gave advice that no one could remember a moment after it was spoken, and he looked sad in the candlelight. Once they were finished, he joined the hands of Earth and Snow together and waited for the final groom. In walked Salt, alone, dazzling in his zirconium suit and purple top hat. He smiled at Earth and he smiled at Snow, and they smiled at him. Smiles were his gift and his curse. Snow began to melt just looking at him. Her long white hair was plastered to her face and dripped down, darkening her dress. Earth looked nervous. The south wind joined their 6 hands. As the candlelight broke in pieces upon him, Salt spoke his vow. I am bright and sharp today, and tomorrow I shall be dull and scattered. The west wind was old, bent, her gray hair sweeping the floor like a cloak. She walked around the three as they clung together. You have chosen to die in yourselves and live in each other, and no one may unmake you now. No more may you visit the clean forests. No more may you play in the rich gardens. No more may you lap the warm beaches. You will cling to the skin of the world and consume whatever you touch, freezing and cracking, numbing and corroding, mounting and mounding, stronger than you ever were apart. The drear city I give you as your home and your food, and the briny rivulets of spring shall be your children. And all the strange wedding guests raised their glasses again, and this time the glasses were heavy, warm and squat. It was, they imagined, the sharp sip of whiskey that brought tears to their eyes, not the sight of the 3 celebrants in their embrace, for they had seen that so many times before. Still, was there not something to pull at the heart in that small mound of wet lace and black hair that had been the lovely Snow a moment before? Something in the musk of desperation as Earth dissolved into the humid air. Something in the swirling rime of Salt, like hoarfrost on the obsidian tiles of the floor. Only the west wind downed her whiskey without a tear, and walked a few shuffling paces over the floor where the 3 had been, leaving footprints. She was old enough to have forgotten the trappings of ceremony that marked a wedding from a funeral. And we are getting a snowstorm here in Ottawa tomorrow, so we'll have lots of Earth and Snow and Salt on the roads. Thank you
Do
very
they have
much,
a baby
everyone.
called Snurt?
Yes, I should. That's the sequel. I should write that.
Oh, the Snurt baby. I think you and I are sort of from the same area because I'm from the upper Midwest. Very familiar with Snurt. It was never as lovely as that story. Not as lovely as either of them. Thank you. And thank you, Minerva. It's been fun seeing you in the background, making whatever commentary you cats make as you go. between the stories, we like to take a breath. Let the first reader's stories sink in, prepare for the next one. Thank you, Kate. Our next reader tonight is Elad Haber. Elad Haber has been quietly publishing short fiction for almost 20 years. He attended Clarion when he was just 18 years old, you little prodigy, you. You might find his stories in various forgotten corners of the internet or in the dusty backrooms of basement bookstores, which are, we gotta admit, pretty cool places anyway. He has recent publications from Perhappened Mag, the Night's End podcast, Underland Arcana, and forthcoming from Lightspeed. Visit eladhaber.wordpress.com for links. Elad, welcome.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Laura and Daniel, for having me back on. All right, today I'm going to be reading a story called But My Heart Keeps Watching. It was published in Underland Arcana, issue 8. I'll also have a story in issue 9. Content warning for this is death and assault. I built my father out of bones. There are photos of him all over our house. I know what he looked like on his wedding day, on the beach with his shirt off, on a boat with my mother with wind in their hair and holding a baby version of me, his smile as big as my tiny head. On Sundays, we went to the cemetery to pay our respects. His grave was alone at the top of a hill. Most days my mother is fine, sad but functioning, but on Sundays she's a mess. She cries and cries. She doesn't remember to make me lunch or dinner. I asked her once, years after my father had passed, "Mom, why are you so sad?" And she said, "Because my heart is broken." The next day at school, I built her a papier-mâché heart, painted it red and purple, favorite colors, and gave it to her at night. I removed the gears from a clock and inserted it into the heart so that it looked like it was beating. I said to my mother, "I made you a new heart." She laughed and patted my head and said, "You're sweet, Rose." But I wasn't trying to be funny. I was being serious. I don't know what I wanted her to do, but it definitely wasn't laugh. I started crying and rushed to my room. I slammed the door so hard, it cracked a little. My only memory of my father is when he used to take me to the city to visit the Museum of Natural History. He loved history, and we both loved the taxidermy. The dinosaurs were my father's favorite. We stood in front of the massive skeleton of the tyrannosaur for what felt like hours. I could see he wanted to reach out to touch the elegant bones. I asked him, after a while, "How do they know how it all fits?" My father looked at me with a strange expression, like, I said, "No one has ever seen a T-Rex, right? So how do they know what it looks like?" He smiled and pinched my cheek. "Bones are magic, Rosie," he said. He was the only person who called me Rosie. Then he went back to staring at the bones, and I wondered what life was like millions of years ago when the world was young. One day, I went to the cemetery on my own. I snuck out of school during lunch and made sure no one was following me. I thought I heard someone call out to me as I was getting my bike, but the sound of the wind drowned it out. I rode through the deserted daytime streets towards the rolling hills of the cemetery. I stood over my father's grave for a while. Then, as if he had said something to set me off, I started cursing and punching at the ground. I shouted, "Why did you leave? Why did you make her sad?" I started digging with my hands and crying. I don't know what had come over me. I made a decent-sized hole in the earth by the time the sirens approached the hill. Truant officers rushed out of the car and ran towards me. They were angry. Later, my mom came to get me from school. I saw her in the principal's office crying. I was confused because it wasn't Sunday. Every once in a while, the door would open. I would hear her say something like, "She's acting out." After that day, everyone at school started treating me different. The other kids whispered as I passed them in the halls, and the teachers started to talk to me slowly like I was dumb. The school suggested counseling, though it was expensive. My mom agreed. She took an extra shift at the hospital to pay for it and was home even less. I spent more and more time alone. My mother asked other parents to drive me and pick me up from school. I'd come home and there'd be dinner on the kitchen table, usually some drive-through, and I would hear the TV on in their bedroom. I was never sure if she was asleep or at work. The red and purple heart was in the middle of a stack of forgotten mail in the corner of our kitchen. I listened to the tired ticks of the gears as I ate cold hamburgers. For my plan to work, I needed help. I stalked a group of boys who hung out under a banyan tree across the soccer field. They played games out of their parents' old D&D books. I guess the new ones were too expensive. I coaxed a couple of them to the nearby bleachers and traded phone numbers. I needed to get my hands on my father's remains. I wasn't sure why. I felt the pull of it when I was at his grave. It was like a vision. I had to see it through. I spent the rest of the night texting. The boys told me over Messenger how it went down. 3 boys met up near the cemetery. They had stolen shovels and pickaxes from their high school maintenance sheds. There was nighttime security in the area, so one of them was on lookout on an adjoining hill while the other 2 crept towards my father's grave. They had their cell phones on continuous 3-way conference call, like some kinds of away team mission in Star Trek. Digging did not go well. The guys were weak and afraid. They told me they psyched themselves up by thinking this was a morbid video game. They counted each shovelful as a point and kept a tally in their heads. They didn't even consider the crime they were committing. After a few tense hours, where once the security guard in the golf court rolled by but didn't see them, they had the casket uncovered. The 2 boys tied rags around their noses and mouths like they'd seen in the movies and opened the casket. They wouldn't tell me what it looked like inside, except it was gross. I only needed a few bones for my project. They packed those in a duffel bag and left it at the lip of the hill. Then they went about refilling it. One of the boys almost collapsed, and so he switched places with the lookout. They made it home before their parents' phone alarms went off. One of them sent me a message. "It's done. Now your turn. Send us pics." I Googled some leaked nudes of movie stars and sent them the images with the heads cut off. Boys are so dumb. The next morning, I picked up the duffel bag from behind a pile of garbage in the grassy field between the middle and high schools. I slung it over my shoulder and went straight home. I kept checking behind me as if I was being followed, but no one was there. My father had used our garage as a workroom. I remember it being so tidy and organized. He used to tinker with model planes and computers. After he passed, my mother never liked going in there. She had me bring boxes of junk in there every few months. There were so many now they reached the low ceiling and blocked the light bulb. It was as dark as a grave in there. Over the last week, I made some space between the boxes and covered my father's old steel table and tool bench. I laid the duffel bag on the table and turned on a desk lamp. The boys had done well and brought me the handful of bones I needed. I connected them with pieces of copper and hard silver wiring. It looked like a stick figure of a person. From below the table, I pulled out 2 shoeboxes covered in dirt. These I had unearthed myself from our backyard. They were the bones of dead pets from my early childhood, a bird, a cat. I don't know why my pets kept dying. Maybe that's just what pets do. Each of the shoeboxes had the name of the pet drawn on the top with crayons and markers. The letters were faded, and I didn't remember their names. I removed the lids from the boxes and carefully picked up a few of the skeletal remains and placed them on the table. I worked slow and steady to get the pieces fused together. When I was done, the shape reminded me of a monkey, a kind of miniature human cousin. I used the skull of a cat as the head and the tiny stick bones of the bird to create fingers and toes. I threaded fishing wire between the larger human bones and smaller animal bones to keep them together. When I was done, I stepped away from the table and looked proudly on my creation. I had a fleeting thought that someone, like my mother, might see this and think it's a grisly scene of violence and murder. They would ship me off to an insane asylum with a name like Shady Branches. But to me, it was beautiful. It was pieces of my past all put together. I reached into the drawers of the work table where I'd hidden a folder of photographs. I didn't remove any pictures from my house. I snapped photos of them with my phone and then printed those out. The photos, once small enough to fit in a frame, looked grainy and weird when printed up to fit on a page, but it was good enough. I placed the pictures of my father all around the bones. And now for the final touch. I wasn't sure what technique was going to work, so I decided to employ them all. I researched countless rites and rituals on YouTube, sent links to my phone. I bought incense from a rank-smelling shop downtown and chicken guts from a butcher shop a few doors away. I brought them all back to the garage. Each night, I worked myself into a sweaty mess as I tried to coax my father's soul back from the dead. I did rain dances and spun dreidels and even tried Reiki. After a while, I gave up. I lay down amongst the beads and the sand and the painted feathers and tried to sleep. I closed my eyes, and after a moment, I heard a stirring like wind. I looked around to see if there was any open windows or doors. I heard it again, a rustle. I leaped to my feet and looked at the skeleton on the table. When it didn't move, my heart sank. And then one of the arms lifted, then another. It pulled itself off the table like an awakening zombie. It stood on the table, barely 2 feet, with its stick-figure body and tiny cat skull. It looked at me, and amazingly, a voice came out of the bones. "Rosie?" it said. I couldn't speak. The tiny skull took in the room and looked down at its strange body. When it spoke again, I recognized the voice, the deep tones of my father. "What am I doing here?" it asked me. "I don't remember." There was sadness in his voice, profound confusion. I took a step towards it and extended a palm like I might greet an alien visitor. "It's okay," I said. "I'm here. You're back." We went everywhere together. He spent most of the day in my backpack, which I kept pushed on one shoulder. He would whisper jokes or words of encouragement to me during the school day. Sometimes I'd laugh in the middle of a quiet moment in class, and the teacher and the other kids would just look at me and shake their heads. A couple of weeks later, one of the boys who had dug up his bones tried to talk to me during lunch. His name was Travis, and he wore skinny jeans and had a flop of unwashed brown hair that covered his eyes. He asked me some questions, but I couldn't pay attention because my father became agitated as soon as Travis came close to me. He started banging on my shoulder through the backpack. Ouch, I have to go," I said and rushed out of lunchroom. I was hungry the rest of the day. Later, I went under the bleachers by the football field and moved my backpack to the floor and unzipped the top. My father's cat skull peered up at me. "Why did you do that?" I asked him. "I don't trust that boy," said my father's bones. "He's nice," I said, but I dropped it. I didn't want to argue with my best friend. That night, we watched TV together in the living room. My mother was at the hospital, so my father laid on top of me on the couch. He liked to put his head on my chest and listen to my heartbeat. He said it made it feel human. My phone let out an R2D2 series of bleeps. It was Travis texting me. He was asking me out on a date. "Whoa," I said. My father looked up. "What is it?" Nothing. No one." I put the phone away and covered my mouth so he wouldn't see my smile. The next weekend, my mom was working a triple shift when we were out of the house from Friday morning to Sunday night. She left me some cash and made me promise to eat at least 2 meals a day, and both of them cannot be pizza. I texted Travis and told him the coast was clear for him to drop by that evening. I just needed to figure out to do something with my dad. My father was one of those guys who could spend all day watching war documentaries on the History Channel. I placated him at first after his reincarnation in bone form. I would watch endless hours of commentary and grainy footage about World War II and reenactments of Civil War battles. On the Friday after school, midway through a documentary on Hitler's breakfast habits, I got up and said, "I can't watch any more of this." His tiny bone fingers pressed pause on the TV. "What do you mean?" he said. "I just can't," I said, exasperated. "You watch whatever you want. I'm going upstairs to read." I left before he even had a chance to respond. Once in my room, I went straight to my window where Travis waited, crouched in the shadows of my curved roof. I'd never had a boy sneak up to my room before. It made my limbs tingle with excitement. "Hey," he said when I opened the door. "Shh," I said, and gestured for him to come in. His expression was confused. "I thought you said your mom wasn't home." I shrugged and thought quickly. "She still hired a babysitter," I said with a sigh. "She's watching TV downstairs. We have to be quiet." "Okay," said Travis with a smile. He sat on my bed and looked around at all my posters and dolls, remnants from my not so long ago childhood. "Cool room," he said, and then patted the bed next to him. I sat down, close, but not too close, and said, "So are you?" He reached over and kissed me. It was short, dry, with a question mark at the end. I nodded for him to continue, and he put one warm hand under the curve of my jaw and laid another long kiss on my lips. It was my first real kiss, so I wasn't sure what to do, but he went slowly. We took free breaks to breathe. After a few wonderful moments, his hand went wandering on my back and down to the hem of my blouse. He tried a few times to lift up my shirt to my chin, but I quickly clasped his hand in mine and stopped him. He released his lips from mine and said in a whisper, "Come on, Rose, let me see them." He tried again to lift my shirt, and I pushed back away from him. He looked surprised. "Come on," he said. "I knew the pic you sent was fake. If it wasn't, you'd show them to me." He reached out again, and I slapped away his hands. "No," I shouted. Just then, the door to my room burst open. My father, a diminutive skeleton of contrasting bone sizes, stood like a protective dog at my door. My father's tone was all daggers. "You leave her alone." Travis' face was scrunched in disgust. "What the hell is that?" he said. My father leaped like a long jumper from the doorway right onto the bed. He tackled Travis and both fell to the ground in a mess of limbs. They looked like they were wrestling, throwing each other ground and back on top of each other. Get off me, said Travis, and he used 2 palms to shove my father back across the room. Travis scrambled to his feet and rushed out of the bedroom. My father looked proud. He nodded at me and said, "You're welcome." I wasn't sure what to say. Word of the incident spread quickly through the town, as one might expect. Travis did not stay quiet. His report to his friends via text ended up on Facebook. From Facebook, it went to Twitter, Twitter to Instagram, Instagram to Snapchat. After that, it left the ether of cyberspace and ended up in the real world in the form of phone calls to my mother. My phone rang while eating cereal. It was my mom. She never called me while on shift. Occasionally, she would text a, "Doing okay?" But that was the usual limit of our communication. I swallowed a spoonful of Cheerios and picked up the phone. "Yeah," I said. Her voice was already agitated, excessively punctuated. "Rose, I just got the strangest call. Do you have some kind of pet? It attacked a boy? Why was there a boy in the house? What is going on with you?" I put the phone down without saying a word. As I put on my coat and shoes, I could hear my mom continue to have a one-way conversation with herself. Well, she said, "I swear, if you..." I stopped listening. My father was sleeping in the living room. I picked him up and put him in my backpack and left the house. Outside, the morning was thick with fog. It was like it had been raining all night, and suddenly someone pressed pause, and the rain just stopped and waited for input. The streets were slick, wet, and empty. I rode my bike, my hands gripped hard on the bars, back to where all this started, the cemetery and the gravestone atop a lonely hill. My father was silent during the trip, a rarity. Usually he rattled off facts and advice as if it was nothing. He knew. At the base of the hill, I stepped off of my bike and let it fall to the ground. I crouched and swung my backpack in front of me. My father, all 2.5 feet of him, crawled out of the bag and climbed on top of me. He clutched my chest like a baby. I walked him up the hill to his grave. I leaned down, he released his grip on me. He lay down on the grass and looked at me with hollow eye sockets, but still somehow looked sad. "Rosie," he said. "Yeah? Can I hear it one more time?" "Sure." I got down on my knees and leaned my chest towards him. He put one side of his tiny skull against my chest. I could feel my heart rate reverberate his bone body. He leaned back, satisfied. "It's strong." "No," I said. "It's broken." Thank you.
Thank you, Elad. Amazing, isn't it, how hearts keep on beating even once they're broken?
Very well said. I promise I'll bring something fun next time. Something fun.
No need.
No need. That was lovely.
You know, I love the variety of stories we get here and how they can stir genuine emotion in me. And even if that emotion is not necessarily happiness, that's okay, because I'm feeling something real and the story is over, and then I can take what I've learned from it
Thank you so
back
much.
into the rest of my life. So thank you, both of you, for your stories tonight.
Yeah, every week it's kind of a little journey,
Yeah.
story to
Yeah.
the other, amazing.
And I talk about learning like it's school or something. It's not, but you feel how each story just sort of grows inside you, how it plants its seeds and gives you something, and you grow with it. So that's why I'm back every week. Speaking of every week, next week is our last story hour of the year, the end of 2022 for us. And Daniel, I did something sneaky. I actually have a holiday themed pairing for next week.
Ruh-roh. Okay.
I know, right? The next week we will have Sam Schreiber and Rachel Unger. Sam is new to us, to Story Hour, but Rachel has read some incredible stuff for us, which is usually quietly terrifying. So it's going to be very interesting to see how she handles the holidays. I do recommend checking Story Hour 2020, the day of the reading, for any announcements, any changes. And, storyhour2020.com is actually a pretty cool place to be anyway, because you can learn about who's going to be reading next. You can look up some possibly slightly outdated bios from our constantly publishing writers. And there's a link that takes you back to Facebook where you can check out the Story Hour page and see all of the wonderful readings you may have missed and watch a few favorites as many times as you like. No one will ever tell. Oh, Elad, Kate, thank you both so much for a really lovely evening of stories. Thank you to my co-host, Daniel Marcus, who brings us back here every Wednesday. And thank you to all of you who are watching on Facebook right now, to all of you who are watching sometime in the future, for helping us spin the fictive dream together and being part of Story Hour. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.